Nestor has a saying, immigrants get the job done. And after hearing that story, I think you'll agree, they certainly do. Our next door neighbor came from Mexico many years ago. And she lives there with her husband and her son, and they've been our neighbors for 20 years. In the mornings, my wife and I on a nice day will go out to the back patio, and she'll always be there taking care of her plants. And she always greets us the same way. She always says, "¿Cómo amanecieron hoy?" How did you greet the dawn this morning? And I love that greeting. There's just some real depth to it, and I know that she means every word. This is a woman who has worked really hard all her life. I like to call her a tender warrior. Sometimes we'll have family barbecues in both backyards. And when we do this, we usually pass food over the fence. And they'll sometimes pass some arracheras and hot tortillas. And we pass bratwurst and those little tiny lamb chops that you get at Costco. I love those things. We call it barbecue trick or treat. A couple of years ago, her family planned this huge birthday party for her. And I didn't ask her how old she was. I knew that was not a good question to ask, but it must have been a landmark birthday because they really rolled out the red carpet. And they invited us. Her cousin drove his taco truck into their driveway. During the party, all the guests could just go to the window, order anything on the menu, and it was free. And I'd never seen anything like that in my life. Half the party was me and a bunch of little kids standing at the window. And I went twice, and I was getting up to go a third time, and my wife said, you might be pushing it here. But to be honest, I don't think it would have been, because it was real generosity. But I did kind of cool it, because that was the right course when my wife was noticing it. Our daughter-in-law came from Mexico too. She and our son met in Mexico, and they lived there for 6 years. And then she got enrolled in a program where they were looking for bilingual teachers to work at the public schools up here. And she came up, and she had to take all these tests and fill all these requirements and jump through all these hoops to get certified to teach in the United States, but she did it all. And every time she got knocked back, she took a step forward and she got them all finished. She was a lot like our neighbor. She was no slouch. And now she has been a bilingual teacher in the public schools for 13 years. And in 2020, she decided that she wanted to become a US citizen. And I didn't make the connection right away. I don't know. I was waiting for the free taco truck to come back, I think. But she had to, there's a lot of requirements for that as well. You have to take a written English test, and you have to take a civics test, and they do a background check. All the biometrics, your weight, your height, your health records, and you have to send in a copy of your fingerprints. And she did all that. And they set the day for the ceremony and the place, and we all went down to the federal courthouse, and there were 63 people who became US citizens that day from 33 different countries around the world. And the federal judge who presided over the ceremony was retiring, and they asked him what he'd like to do for his last official act. And without hesitation, he said, "I want to preside over a ceremony for new citizens." And he made a speech at the ceremony, and he talked about people who were born in countries all around the world, and they don't realize they're Americans until they come here. And the last part of his speech was when he said to all of the new citizens, welcome home. We went back to our house after the ceremony and had a big American-style cookout. We had hot dogs, we had hamburgers, we had a big sheet cake with an American flag on the top, made out of red, white, and blue frosting. And as we were eating and having a good time, our neighbor walked through her patio and she said, what are you celebrating? And we said, well, our daughter-in-law just became a US citizen. And that's what we're celebrating. She said, I remember when I became a citizen. And she said she had to do all the things that our daughter-in-law did, and it was really hard. And finally, she got them all done and passed the tests. And they said, in about a month, we're going to call you. We'll tell you the date and the time and the place for the ceremony. And she waited a month, and then she waited 2 months and 3 months. And after 4 months, she said, something's wrong. And so she called, and they said, well, you got everything in, but you have no fingerprints. And she said, no, I sent that in. I got the form at the police department, I sent it in. And they said, no, it's not that you didn't send it in. You have no fingerprints. She had worked hard all her life. She washed the family's clothes in the river on the rocks when she was a little girl in Mexico. She had worked in a plant where they washed fruit in a chemical bath, very caustic chemicals, and all the women who worked on the line with her double gloved, but in some instances double gloving wasn't enough. Over the course of her life, she had worked so hard that she had worked the fingerprints right off of her fingers. And she went down to the police station and she asked for a certified letter stating that they couldn't get any usable fingerprints. And with that, they set her ceremony for a month away and she became a US citizen. And when we were all standing there listening to this story, we all had tears in our eyes and nobody knew what to say. So I just cut off a slice of flag cake and I handed it to her over the fence and I said, welcome home. Thank you.